Hello, so in today's instalment on my mini-series on menopause, I'm going to answer some of the questions that you've been asking me about beauty and skin and just help generally for the face and the areas that are really prone to showing the signs of aging, like the neck and the backs of the hands as we age, and really what that has to do with perimenopause and menopause. So starting off, my journey started, as many of you know, with writing the Good Menopause Guide. And there's a whole section in there on beauty and skin with lots of regimes and ideas. But I think let's come back to the fundamental principle of why our skin changes. So our skin is full of estrogen receptors. Yeah, you guessed it, that amazing female hormone that I've talked so much about in the last few weeks. So we have estrogen receptors all over our bodies. As I've said before, it's the female hormone that we totally run on. So it stands to reason that when our levels start to decline, and that is typically in our mid-40s onwards, can be earlier, can be much earlier for some women, especially if you've had a surgically induced menopause or an early onset menopause or something that related to some sort of medical treatment like chemo, that kind of thing can obviously dramatically affect hormone changes. So whenever we lose estrogen, whether it's through age or some kind of medical intervention, then we lose the estrogen in our skin. And estrogen is fundamental for creating two really important things. It helps to create and build collagen and elastin. Now, these are really important supporting fibers of the skin. So it's what gives our skin that kind of dewy freshness, that youthful radiance. And when we're young, obviously young women full of estrogen, their collagen and their elastin fibers are really strong and supple and flexible. And as they start to degrade due to lack of estrogen and, of course, the sheer effect of gravity, bringing our skin down, everything starts to head south and sag, then that's why our faces begin to look really devitalized and tired, and we can develop lines and sagging skin, and we lose elasticity. So first and foremost, I think before we even touch on beauty and skincare, which is important and does play a part, obviously, it's important to actually think about what's going on inside. So number one, of course, if you're losing estrogen, then the only way to get it back is to replace it. So I've touched before on eating phytoestrogen-rich foods. Yes, they can be helpful, certainly, but also a significant number of women don't process that form of phytoestrogen properly. And, without genetic testing, it's quite hard to know that. So you may be filling your face full of phytoestrogens, soya and flaxseed and all of those things, and actually it may not actually be converting in the body properly to the available form of estrogen that we can use. So safe topical application of estrogen. I've talked before about estrogel, sprays and patches, that kind of estrogen that goes through the skin is really helpful. So that kind of is probably the number one thing in terms of looking after our skin and keeping it looking more youthful as we age. If that's a priority for you, then it's a really welcome benefit, a side effect, if you like, a good side effect of replacing your hormones. So other things that we can do alongside of that, well, I think remember that our skin becomes quite sensitive. So we can be more sensitive to sunlight, for example. So using a sunscreen is really important, especially when we're outside. It's not important if we're inside, but if we're outside, hopefully, if you're watching this in real time, we're all about to be let out soon and hopefully enjoy some spring sunshine and then moving into the summer. Now, the sunshine is this two-edged sword, really, because it's very good. It's very good for our mood, for our mind, for our body to be out in sunshine. And then physically, we synthesize vitamin D through the skin. So that's one of the main ways that we get vitamin D naturally is through the skin. The other way that we get it, of course, is through animal origin foods. So things like dairy products, very high in vitamin D, meat, fish, eggs, that kind of thing. But of course, if you're a plant-based eater, then you may not be getting enough. So all these reasons, very much worth considering a vitamin D supplement. Government guidelines here in the UK is that everybody should be supplementing, particularly in the winter months. So Get outside, very good. Vitamin D on the skin, very good. But of course, we know also that the downside of sunshine and sunlight is UVA and the photoaging and burning, UVA and UVB. So UVA and UVB both come from sunshine. UVA, you can remember it because A is for aging and B is for burning. It's quite handy that. So UVA is the light that goes deeper into the skin and it can cause aging. It disrupts the cells and causing damage. So that's why we're more likely to get things like hyperpigmentation, which again can increase over age. So as we get older, we can expect to see things like age spots, or they're called liver spots sometimes, these sort of brown patches on our hands and our face. Anyway, really that's been exposed to a lot of sunlight. So protecting the skin from that with a sunscreen is really important, and our skin gets more sensitive to light as we get older. UVB, by the way, is for burning. You really don't want to get the UVB rays because they burn the skin. Any kind of redness on the skin basically is it saying, ouch, I'm burning. So we do want to protect the skin, but at the same time, you want the benefits of the vitamin D. So if you're using a sunscreen, and I do recommend using a sunscreen outside, particularly on the areas that are prone to aging. So for me, I'm not so bothered about things like my upper arms and my legs, but I'm really vigilant about using a sunscreen always on my face, on my neck and here, the sort of upper chest area. This is really key because as the sun shines, it hits here. So this is a real key area. We can get a lot of crepiness around here. And of course, backs of the hands as well. So, I sunscreen to here and here all the time, a little bit higher up, perhaps if I'm wearing something that's shorter sleeved. Now, when choosing a sunscreen, it's really important, especially if your skin is more sensitive with age, that you choose the ingredients really carefully. And I would always suggest going for a mineral-based sunscreen. So sunscreens really form into two categories. You've got the chemical-based ones, and then you've got the mineral-based. So the synthetic chemical sunscreens contain chemicals that absorb UV or UVA and UVB light, and they mitigate the damage while it's on the skin. To my mind, that's not as safe as a mineral-based sunscreen, because what mineral-based sunscreens do is they act as reflectants. It's like wearing a tiny, almost invisible suit of armor on the skin that bounces the UVA and the UVB away from the skin, so it doesn't actually get to affect the epidermis, the upper level of the skin. So if you're buying a sunscreen, make sure that it's a mineral sunscreen. It's less likely to cause irritation. It contains ingredients like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. These are really safe, inert minerals. They can leave a slightly chalky finish on the skin, but nowadays the micronized technology makes the particles so small that they're often invisible. In fact, many of them now contain an ingredient called invisible zinc, which is micronized so small that you can't see it, but it does actually leave a layer on the skin that's enough to protect it. So if you find that you suffer from things like prickly heat, and that again can be caused by lower levels of hormones as we age, really important to protect your skin with a sunscreen when you're out and about. So other ingredients that can be really helpful, there are two things that I've found really with older skin, particularly heading into menopause. One is hyaluronic acid. Now that sounds a bit scary because it's got the word acid at the end of it, but hyaluronic acid is actually a naturally occurring substance within the body, and it's a moisturizing factor. So it's something that is naturally there to keep the skin and the joints all lubricated and working well. And again, with age, as we hit menopause, we tend to produce less hyaluronic acid. So looking for skincare that contains hyaluronic acid is a really good thing. Again, don't be put off by the name. It's really gentle. It's very few people are sensitive to it, so it tends to be quite a safe ingredient to use. And it's something that you can use topically. You can find it in moisturizers and you can find it in serums. And actually, I have to say, over the years, I've been really impressed with the increasing number of serums around that really do help to keep the skin smooth and supple. If your skin is really super dry, then go for a moisturizer on top of your serum. That can really help to just smooth and help the skin feel plumped up and more comfortable. So use a moisturizer on top of your serum if that's what you'd like to do. Be careful with sunscreens because many moisturizers these days have sunscreens in them and they can irritate the skin, particularly, as I say, if your skin is sensitive due to menopause. I personally use a separate sunscreen. I don't like using moisturizers that contain a sunscreen because two reasons. One is they can be sensitizing because they often contain the sunscreen chemicals that can irritate sensitive skin. But secondly, they're there in very small amounts. So if you apply your moisturizer with sunscreen, say in the morning after you've brushed your teeth, come lunchtime when you're outside perhaps and the sun is at its strongest, they're really not going to give you very much protection. So I would say keep your sunscreen separate. And obviously, if you're using a night cream, well, then you definitely don't need one that contains a sunscreen. If you want to use a night cream, then that's absolutely fine. Although I have to say, over the years, again, I found that serums have been more effective overnight. And also ingredients like retinol. Now, retinol is a vitamin A derivative, and there are lots of different types. It's a whole big world out there of retinols. If you want to know more about retinol and retinoic acid, again, go to earlewellbeing.com. Myself and my beauty team have written a lot about retinols in the past. But you can find really gentle, low-strength retinols that really do help our skin as it ages. And the way to use a retinol is to build up very gently, because they can cause irritation. The way they work is they help to speed up cell turnover. So that's something that slows as we age. So as we go into menopause, our skin cell turnover is slower. It means that it takes longer to get those lovely, fresh, young, plump skin cells coming to the surface of the skin. So in order to give skin a little bit of a boost, then using something with a retinol can be a really good idea. And you can find retinol products now for the hands, for the face, for the body. And again, it's a really good, well-tested ingredient. Just start gently with it. And as I say, if you want more information specifically on retinols, then go to the Earle Wellbeing website. While I talk about extremities, it's really important to remember things like hands. The skin on our hands is really thin, and many of us, as we get older, find that we get real signs of crepiness and age spots as we age, never more so than at the moment when we're constantly washing our hands. They're in and out of detergents and hand sanitizers all the time. These strip the natural oils in the skin. So what I do is I just use pretty much whatever I'm using on my face, it goes on the back of my hand. Eye creams are really good. If I'm using up an old eye cream, or I get an eye cream and I don't really like it that much on my face, I'll just use it on the backs of my hands. Fading things like age spots can be really hard. It's much better to prevent them from happening in the first place by using a sunscreen. But there are treatments out there specifically for fading age spots. You can find them in most high street chemists. They're not expensive. The thing with them though is that you have to keep using them. They don't just sort of get rid of the age spots and then that's it. If you want to do that, then you're going to have to look at something like lasers or IPL, using light treatment that actually makes the pigment disappear. They're very effective. They are quite expensive. They're salon-based treatments. But if you find that you've got age spots on your face or your hands and you want to fade them or get rid of them permanently, then IPL or laser or light treatments are the best way. And before I finish on that, I should say that the LED light treatments, I think, are really, really good for perimenopause and menopausal skin. We're seeing more and more studies showing the effects of red LED light and also near infrared light. Again, it works by stimulating the collagen and the elastin fibers deep in the skin. So these are really natural ways of using something as basic as light to target the skin so that it starts to help itself. It starts to produce its own internal fibers that keep the skin looking young and glowy. But ultimately, the best way to keep your skin young and glowy is to replace your estrogen. Don't forget that our skin is full of estrogen receptors. And I did an interesting podcast not that long ago with an American gynecologist who was developing a skincare range specifically for older women using estrogen. And there are interesting early studies on that, using estrogen topically on the skin. Now, it doesn't work to rub your HRT gel on your skin, because I did ask that question. I was thinking about trying it myself. And the reason is that it's a different format from the estrogen that we need to top up the estrogen on the epidermis, the outer level of the skin. But there are formulations out there that contain estrogen that's designed for the skin, and they can be a useful adjunct. So I think always going internally is the best option. But yeah, if that's something that you want to try, then why not? I would also say that one of the things that came out of that conversation with her was just a really interesting anthropomorphical comment, looking at how we have sort of progressed as humans, and one of the reasons why we have so many estrogen receptors in our skin. Because really, the skin on our face is the first outward sign of aging, isn't it? Immediately, you can tell pretty much somebody's age by how they look. And she was making the point that in the old days, when we were in kind of hunter-gatherer mode and males were looking for a mate to reproduce with, to carry on with the female species, they would look at a woman and they would look at the face. And you could tell by looking at somebody's face whether she was capable of having children, of being reproductively able, because that would show in her face because of her levels of estrogen. So when we're young and we're fertile, we have lots of estrogen, all the estrogen receptors in our skin are really pumped up and firing, and we look very vibrant and we look very fertile. As we age, then they would say back then, well, you want to be sure that, you're not wasting your time trying to procreate with an older woman who isn't fertile. Therefore, the signals from the skin show that by showing that the skin actually is devitalized and it's lost that luminosity and that plumpness of youth. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there as an aside. I thought that was quite interesting when you start thinking about how estrogen relates to the skin and what we can do about it. But there's lots that we can do. I would think stick to really simple ingredients. Take a look at hyaluronic acid. Use things like the mineral-based sunscreens. Obviously, internally, we want to be eating lots of good quality fats. So this is not the time to go low fat. Our skin really falls apart if we start to take fat out of the diet. So make sure that we're having good quality fats, the fish oils, the omega-3s, extra virgin olive oil, your full fat dairy products. Don't go for low fat, don't go for skimmed anything. You want those lovely fat soluble vitamins that are in the fat, the vitamin D, the vitamin A, the vitamin E, for example. Nuts and seeds, really good sources of these healthy skin saving fats. So I hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to being back with you here next time.